Go. It tells me I can do things, but we'll see.
I'm gonna tweet this out.
All right. Well, now we're live on both YouTube and Twitter. Fantastic. So turns out you can actually listen to a space on your desktop, Carlin. You can't host it. So I got to have two devices going.
All
That's how
right.
we're
Well,
pulling this
now we're
off.
live on both YouTube and Twitter. Fantastic. So turns out you can actually listen to a space on your desktop, Carlin. You can't host it. So I got to have two devices going. That's how we're pulling this off. But sharing that, so this will be simulcast on YouTube for anybody who wants to watch. Anyone that wants to chime in, there's no agenda. This is strictly shitposting live in free time on the happiest, holiest of high holidays, January 6th, Insurrection. And I'll just lead off and let you guys know a little bit about my own feelings on the day and recap a little bit of a speech I gave maybe last year during PorkFest's Soapbox Idol, where I got to tell people I'm generally the black pilled of amongst all black pilled folks here when it comes to the future of liberty and how we're proceeding and pursuing the future. But January 6, 2021 was the day I got to wake up with a little bit of a white pill. Because for the first day in my adult life, I got to wake up to a reality where politicians were afraid of the people. Whether it's fake, staged, or a script written for our own entertainment and their own power, at the end of the day, what people saw was those who claim to be in power and those who claim to be the political elite on their knees crawling in abject fear of the people they claim to rule and crying for the mercy of those they claim to rule. It reminds everybody that at the end of the day, the power is not within the halls of Congress, but within the people who those in Congress rely on for the consent to govern. That at the end of the day, the power is with you, the individual. And that is incredibly important. So if anybody wants to speak up, if you got some shit posting you want to make, again, this is my first time hosting one of these. We're doing these live. We are simulcasting on YouTube as well. Feel free to tweet out, share, invite, raise your hand if you want to talk. Kino, what you got to bring to the table today?
Oh man, I didn't even raise my hand for this. I apologize in advance.
No worries. We're figuring things out going. I saw there was a request for you there, so I just said, "Heck yeah, let's go."
Well, not a problem. Well,
how are you celebrating the holiday?
Well, like I figure we celebrate this glorious holiday by making this a new nationwide or at least a statewide holiday in the state of New Hampshire, where instead of setting up a Christmas tree, we set up a podium. And if that podium is gone in the morning and the QAnon shaman has paid you a visit, and if you're really good that this year, you would have received an AR-15. So that's how I plan on celebrating, is setting up a podium, and if it's gone tomorrow, then someone paid me a visit. So that's how I plan.
I like it.
Leave out a bag of beef jerky instead of cookies. Get the war paint on. Have a wonderful day.
I like it. We definitely need to invite more QAnon shaman. I mean, now I'm thinking we should campaign for QAnon shaman to be Speaker of the House now.
Like I agree with you on principle. However, I still want to present my vote for podium guy.
Sure. I mean, but to your point, it does need to be a celebrated holiday, and that's where we're at. And one of the things that I think is overlooked, and I mean, there may not be many traditional Irish Christians left or people who traditionally celebrate the holidays, but January 6th is and always has been the 12th night of Christmas, 12th night, the actual culmination of the whole high holy winter holiday every year. So, I mean, leaving out your podium for QAnon shaman to come at night and bring you your freedom is really just an extension of that Christmas spirit at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So, and all right. Now, who else do we got here? We got Carlin is here, and let me see. I'm trying to figure out this. I got somebody else requesting they want to speak up, and we got the one and only author extraordinaire, Dickie Walnuts. Dickie, how are you today? How are you celebrating the holiday?
By drunk driving.
Drunk driving, Dickie. That's only acceptable if you're a Kennedy. You know that.
I have about as much brains as a Kennedy, so I think it applies.
I don't know. Are you working on any new books this year?
I need to actually like write those 2 books so we can like sell them on the Patreon or something. I need money. I need a white check mark instead of a blue one. Isn't that how you got yours?
Originally, but you know, now you can just pay for it. I can't tell the difference. I still don't own a Apple device, so it's all blue check marks.
Well, same. I paid for mine too, so I can post the video that's like 3 minutes long. I'm probably gonna like unsubscribe next month or something. Maybe I'll keep it.
So maybe, I mean, maybe it's worth it. Who knows? Elon Musk is claiming he's fighting for our free speech, but at the end of the day, he still supports the FBI. And I wonder what Elon actually feels about January 6th and the shitposting memes extraordinaire. I mean, we've seen people get banned even in the last week or so for simply saying transgenderism is a mental disorder. It was a transgender woman, Sarah Hidgen, got banned for saying transgenderism is a mental disorder from Elon's new Twitter. So I wonder what they're going to have in store for people like Reed and LPNH and the shitposters extraordinaire today.
Shit, Elon's satanic outfits are pretty fucking cool. I'll give him that.
Well, I mean, you got to be pretty cool when you're rocking what, 14 different baby mamas or something.
He can repopulate the Earth any day. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Reality is that's what's going to do in Elon by the end of his life isn't going to be the government. It's going to be child support.
Holy shit. Who's going to make him pay it?
Oh, who knows? The 19th Amendment, probably. That's why you got to hurry up on that book.
Yeah.
All right.
I need Elon to co-sponsor it.
All right. Well, Carlin, you've been in here from the beginning. You're helping promote the stream, inviting some people. How are you celebrating the holiday today?
You know, last night on my channel, I rebroadcasted the stream that I did when I got back from the Capitol on January 6th because I was at the glorious event and I watched it for the first time. And these were like, I did this stream maybe like an hour after I got back from the Capitol. So I had like basically gotten back, eaten dinner. I hadn't really watched any of the news. I didn't really know what the reaction was. And so this stream was like my unvarnished thoughts about the experience. And I watched it for the first time last night since it actually happened. And, you know, it was so funny because I was so happy about it. I was like, this is great. F anyone who disagrees. I don't really care. If you didn't denounce all the Antifa and BLM stuff, I don't give a fuck what you think. And it was just like when you were actually there, it was something that gave me hope. And looking back on it now, it was like, I'm so frustrated at all of the limp dick conservatives who like came hat in hand and were like, this is the worst event since the Civil War. No, it wasn't. It's so stupid to even describe it that way. And even like one of the things I talked about in that video was about how when Trump supporters broke into Nancy Pelosi's office, they left her a strongly worded note. And it was one of the most hilarious things. It was like, we are not going to forget this, Nancy. And they're acting like that's as bad as Antifa literally setting the White House on fire. And it's just like the absurdity of what this has turned into makes it even better because, like you said, Justin, it shows you exactly how scared this whole thing made them. And I don't think people should be upset. I think, like, you know, I was watching the Speaker of the House vote before this started, and even like with the Republicans, they're like, you know, they're clapping for the Capitol Police and they're doing all this stuff, and it's like, grow a fucking pair. You want to know why you lose? It's because you apologize when you don't do anything wrong.
Well, you're absolutely right. The narrative that the worst attack on American democracy in history is absolutely flabbergasting to me. Like it's almost an insult to like the memory of 9/11, Pearl Harbor, or any of the other atrocities, Waco, the Move Philadelphia bombing, and any of the attacks committed against the United States or even by the government of the United States against its own people that have been so much more catastrophic and deadly than the guided tour of the Capitol building. I mean, let's be honest, if a couple of LARPers and cosplayers with shoe on head amongst their midst taking a tour of the Capitol building, where one of the most violent things to happen was a murder by a police officer of an unarmed tourist, or somebody having a heart attack because their own taser went off in their pocket and tased their balls, I hardly think you can call that a terrorist attack or an insurrection.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, again, as someone who was there, I didn't see what was going on in the building when I was there because you can't. It's not how it works. But it's like there were at least 50,000 people on the Capitol lawn that day, and most of them were just chanting their chants and waving their flags, and most of them had no idea what was going on. And it's just like to paint all of these people as I don't want to say I want to be very clear because I know this is being recorded and will probably be against me later. I am not suggesting that I wish for violence at all. I denounce violence, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But you know what? If the people that were at the Capitol that day had actually been the evil, violent terrorists that the media is hell bent on portraying them as, the Capitol would have been burned to the ground that day. That's a fact. There were too many people there. And so it's like both sides are just disgusting for me for continuing to play into this political theater. It wasn't that bad. January 6th didn't go far enough. I said what I said and I'm not upset about it.
Well, maybe we would have been better off if they did burn the whole thing to the ground. Absolutely. And I remember that day. I was not fortunate enough to be amongst the crowd, and I've said this time and time again. I won't do anything to defend the motivations or the inspiration for the crowd that was trying to take over the Capitol, as Thomas Jefferson said in defending the rebellion in Massachusetts. I'll say nothing of their motives, built in naivety and ill-suited, but like, has there ever been a rebellion so honorably conducted? The very nature that there was a rebellion. Can any nation preserve its liberties if it's not reminded from time to time that its people preserve the spirit of rebellion? And whether or not you agree with the motives of those who raged against the Capitol building on January 6th to reinstate Donald Trump as president, the fact that somebody did something is in and of itself the important part. And somebody pointed out earlier today, it's on Twitter, that the January 6th protesters had the right target, but the wrong motivations. Well, the Black Lives Matter protesters had the right motivations, being against the corrupt and systemic violence and policing in America, but the wrong targets by going after private businesses and their own communities rather than the government.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say that like I don't think that that most of the people who were there even had the motivation of overturning anything. I mean, I think that most of the people there really had no idea what was going on and were just kind of following the crowd, and they had seen
Yeah.
they'd spend a summer watching, like the BLM riots, and they were like, well, they can do this, why can't we do this? And like we've all seen the famous video. I remember like I got sporadic cell service at the Capitol, and so the only time I really had cell service was like when I was directly like right next to the building, obviously not inside, but like right outside the building. And so I started getting all these phone calls from people who were like, Carlin, are you okay? And I was like, I was fine. I felt totally safe. But at some point I had the presence of mind to like call my husband. I was like, I was like, just to let him know that I was okay so he didn't worry. And so I called him and I was like, Victor, you might be hearing some things on the news right now, but I'm okay and I feel totally safe and you don't need to worry about any of it. And Victor had like turned on the TV and he basically said that the only video that he saw was like them walking through the velvet ropes. And so he didn't think it was that big of a deal either.
Yeah, well, the news made it so over sensationalized and hyped it up entirely. And I know I've sent an invite to Sean Bradley Weitzman, trying to get him to join the space and talk about it. And I'm sure he's busy today, but he's another one who was there on January 6th, and he was there as a journalist and trying to record just as an independent First Amendment journalist who wanted to document the events of what was heading off to be the biggest protest of the year and the biggest quote unquote right wing protest in a long time. And wasn't really taking any side and just documenting things. And he went inside when the crowd went inside to continue filming and see what was going on. And then he cooperated with the FBI and turned over all his footage because, you know, he was a good American. He's like, well, if there was crimes committed and I got enough footage, you probably need this footage. So here you go, turn it over. And they charged him, and he's facing a jail sentence over going in as a journalist just to document what was happening.
And I think that that's like the stuff that's crazy. I mean, I ended up getting interviewed by the FBI because I sent out this tweet, or I scheduled the tweet when I didn't even really know what was going on, when I like showed up at the Capitol and I saw all this ruckus, and I like I said, there was like no internet there that day. So like tweets would go out in bursts for like the 2 seconds that the phone could catch the internet. And I sent one out saying, I didn't think I'd be storming the Capitol today, or like something like that. Some idiot on Twitter reported it to the FBI, and so I got my FBI interview as well, which was an experience I never thought I'd have in my life. But like I didn't go in the building, so they didn't have anything on me. But I really do feel for the people who are just there documenting it. And I'll say too, like one of the reasons that I stayed as long as I did, because I could already like visualize in my head what was going to go on with how this was going to be portrayed in the media, and I was like, it may not be the best idea to be here, but at the same time, I felt some sort of like obligation to film as much stuff as I could on the outside and to like get a sense of what actually was happening, so that there could be people who were giving a truthful account of what happened. I really did feel some sort of obligation to do that. And you know, I'm grateful that I had the presence of mind to not go in that building, because I was right outside the doors. I could have gone in the building, but something held me back from doing it. And I do really feel for the people who got needlessly caught up in these things. It's too bad.
I don't think I would be able to avoid the temptation myself. I think I probably would have been among the first in just to see what happened. But we all know my decision making isn't the fondest of people. So, hey, well, everybody
Justin
listening.
just wanted his balls tased.
Hey, well, I've been tased, I've been maced, and for less of a reason before, and uh, I have the history of putting myself and my camera in places that get me into trouble. I see Joe from Breaking the Flaw in the listening in. He can attest to the dangers you place yourself in when you go to public events with cameras. Joe, if you'd like to chime in, feel free to raise your hand. I'll add you as a speaker. If anybody has anything you want to add, questions you want to ask, Carlin was there. I've got strong opinions. Like I said, we're just shit posting in real time. Feel free to raise your hand, and I'll promote you to a speaker. But down in Boston during the Straight Pride rally a few years back, I went down there with the sole intent of putting myself in dangerous positions with my camera, and got right up between the Antifa protesters and the Boston police, and then I'm getting maced, and almost had my life taken into the hands of the Massachusetts State Police that day because of it. And it was actually Antifa who saved my life after a Massachusetts State Police officer tackled me to the ground at the tail end of getting maced by a Boston police officer, and I got that whole thing on film, thankfully. So,
I just want to say that I love the Straight Pride Parade. I think it's hilarious. That's
yes,
it's
yes and no. Like, here's the thing: it could have been done as an artful troll, but the people who organized it did so with the strict intent of edging on violence and doing it
oh,
improperly.
it's
I was
short.
I was there the day that I was one of the first people it was pitched to. Brendan Navam actually pitched it to myself and a few friends of mine when we were down at the British consulate in Boston protesting the extradition of Julian Assange. When Antifa came out to actually protest against us supporting Assange's freedom. that day, and he pitched us on the idea of the straight pride parade and said the entire point was to trigger the left into getting violent. And some of the speakers they brought out that day, they actually brought out a speaker from Texas, a minister, who gave a talk in City Hall Plaza in Boston about how we needed to hang the gays to purge society from the satanic influence.
Oh, no,
And I think they crossed the line.
back because I had heard something different than that. So if that's what they were doing, F them.
Yeah, I think it started with the idea of being an artful troll, but it got so far out of hand they started to eat their own bullshit, much like Chris Cantwell. So, but I mean, that's the risk when with any subversive or reactionary movement is eventually you start to eat your own bullshit, and we see that with the MAGA movement nowadays, where Trump started as the anti-establishment candidate, and it does not matter how much of what he did during his presidency to embody and empower the establishment. People still see him as the anti-establishment representative and the opposition to all things government establishment, no matter what evidence we see otherwise.
I mean, I tend to think, and I don't want to hog the conversation. So if someone else wants to talk, please feel free. But this is how spaces work. People have to talk. It's frustrating to me because I think that a lot of Trump supporters, and I don't mean this in like an insulting way, but they're like simple people at the end of the day. They are. And I think that they don't pay attention as well as they could to what Trump actually did. And listen, man, Trump did some things that I like. Trump won my support when he issued the executive order that banned critical race theory from the federal government and from all government contractors. That was an important thing. I thought it was a good thing. So I'm not shitting on Trump. Like, he won my support when he did that. But I also think that a lot of people have turned a blind eye to quite frankly, Trump's incompetence in so many areas. And I think that there is a tremendous amount of value in terms of just like how much Trump pisses everyone off. Just mentioning his name gets people to react to him. And so I do think there's value there. I love how much the Democrats hate him. I love how much the Democrats are unhinged about him. But with all that said, I think that Trump's base often lies to themselves about who Trump is and what he believes. And I think I do think there is this MAGA cult thing. There is a cult of Trump. And I think that I'm not suggesting that Ron DeSantis is the answer or anything. I don't necessarily think he is, but I really do wish that they would move beyond it because they're going to have to at some point.
Well, you see the best of intentions being manipulated for poor outcomes, or vice versa, with it as well. Like, look at the current debacle with the Speaker of the House. Um, Again, motivations aside, like, they're opposing the installation of McCarthy as the Speaker of the House based on loyalty to Donald Trump and his agenda, not based on any sort of principle that should be upheld by the Freedom Caucus. You have Justin Amash, who's actually physically in Washington, D.C., attending the proceedings. There's pictures of him, a video of him sitting next to Thomas Massie and just talking with Freedom Caucus members the entire week through all these votes. And with nothing to lose, nobody has nominated him as the potential compromise Speaker of the House candidate who could actually bridge the gap and promote the values of the Freedom Caucus. But there have been votes for Donald Trump for Speaker of the House out of the Freedom Caucus because it's more about spiting the opposition within their own party and exerting a level of control rather than it is about standing on their own principles.
Well, and in this latest vote for Speaker, I don't know if you caught any of this, Justin, but it seems as though they're starting to break the Freedom Caucus because a lot of them have now defected and are voting for McCarthy, presumably because they got the committee seats that they wanted or something like that. I gotta admit, I did love that Matt Gaetz nominated Trump. I thought that was hilarious, and I actually kind of liked Amash's pitch too when he made it a couple weeks ago, saying, "I'll be Speaker of the House. I'm a neutral third party." But I mean, like, as we know, like no one's actually interested in accomplishing anything in the Republicans. I think that Kevin McCarthy will probably end up winning eventually, but like, and then they're going to do nothing for 2 years, and we can complain about how they're doing nothing for 2 years because none of them have balls.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's not about accomplishing anything. It's about what they can do to set themselves up to control, to have control, and to exert control. And whether or not that control accomplishes anything at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because they get to claim that they were the ones in charge the whole time, which means they get to assign the blame and take the credit as they desire, for things that are going to happen either way. And at the end of the day, when nothing gets done and garbage, bad things happen at the end of this Congress, they're going to blame it on the fact that Biden was president, not the fact that they couldn't muster congressional will or politic properly. And Justin Amash does have a fantastic pitch, and I have my problems with Justin Amash. My problems with him aren't on his principles or his libertarianism or his commitment to his principles. My problems with him are he's kind of bland. He's not an inspired speaker, and he doesn't really hold a crowd that well. I don't think he would be a good candidate for the Libertarian Party, because as good as a principled libertarian he is, and with the background and the resume he has, unfortunately, I think he'd be overlooked by the majority of Americans. But in the role of Speaker of the House, I think he'd be exactly what the country needs to restore some kind of semblance of debate and governance to Congress, which is precisely why they would never go for somebody like him.
I mean, and some of the speeches that some of these representatives have been making, they're basically almost in tears about how Kevin McCarthy has this glorious mandate, and how dare you not vote for Kevin McCarthy, because obviously he's the man that people want. No one can stand Kevin McCarthy. No one can stand him. And I'm sorry, like Mitch McConnell, I put him in the same boat. Like the Republican base is actively screaming for new leadership. Their own party hates them, and the fact that sitting members of the House, well, almost sitting, they haven't been sworn in yet, but like elected members of the House of Representatives are getting up and almost crying about how much they love and support their dear glorious leader Kevin McCarthy, who everyone else hates. It's like this is so indicative of the Republican Party, and you know what? Like I'm going to say it. Like I think that this is the time that the Libertarians really have an opportunity to poach a lot of people from the Republicans, because Kevin McCarthy is going to end up being Speaker. He is. I'm sorry, he is. And I think that for a lot of people watching this play out over the last several days, that might be a really disaffecting experience. And the Republican Party is just going to continue to fail. And if the Libertarian Party is not there to pick up all of these people and to teach them why the Republicans are not for small government, that the Republicans are sending billions and billions and billions of your dollars overseas to Ukraine, that the Republicans are basically 2 years behind the Democratic Party, as Michael Malice always says. They're progressives going the speed limit. They're doing exactly the same thing. If your party's not going to stand up for you, you got to try somewhere else. And the Libertarian Party is the only viable option. And I agree with you. Amash is not the figurehead that we need. You know what? And I think, like, again, I like his speaker play. I do. But overall, I think Amash is a feckless coward. The dude refused to even take a picture with Jeremy Kauffman because of optics at the national convention. I think that if he ever saw me coming towards him, he would run away so quickly. I've never even spoken to the guy. I would say the same thing as Spike Cohen, by the way. Spike Cohen was hanging out with the Loser Brigade in the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania convention last year, and I happened to stumble upon them, and Spike was so scared to even talk to me. It was ridiculous. And so, I don't see them as viable options either. But there are people out there that can lead it. And I don't know. That's really all I have to say.
Sure. Well, we got a couple other people who've jumped up. Keno, I see your hand raised, but Gabby's in the stage. So, Gabs, how are you celebrating the holiday? And what kind of question or how do you want to chime in?
What do you mean, how am I celebrating the holiday? My car just got broken into, so I'm celebrating it by talking on the phone to the damn police that ain't answering the phone.
Well, that's never a good experience.
That's a whole other rant. Well, okay, so Carlin, Cohen is like Donnie and Jeff's boy, right? But okay, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around libertarianism, right? But at the same time, today I probably am pissed off enough that I might actively start voting for libertarian candidates whenever they come up, locally, especially, because now I'm just to a point where I got the fuck it's now, and I'm just like, okay, the GOP has just ripped their draws with me, and I'm kind of done with them. Even though there's so many things about libertarianism that I can't get behind. But at this point, I don't think that conservatives are gonna get it. That their people they're not voting their party. You know what I mean? It's just like I said, with the 2 years behind, just turning into progressives. Like it's just getting ridiculous.
Well,
But
the problem, Gabs, is like for every one person like you who's starting to come around and have this realization that the conservatives and the Republicans don't actually represent their voter base or represent the people that they're claiming to represent at the end of the day, there's 999 others who just see the letter at the end of the ballot. So they don't care what's said in Congress. They don't care what's passed. At the end of the day, they were raised to believe that Republicans are good, Democrats are bad, or vice versa, and will never consider an alternative. And that's what's given us the political shitstorm and the political divide that we have in this country. You say you're almost almost there, ready to vote for libertarians out of the fuck it mentality. My question is, where are you? What state do you live in? And like, what's the political outlook where you live? Because the local vote, especially at the local level, that's the most important. Hands down, who's in Congress doesn't matter at the end of the day. Who's on your local zoning board and your local school board has more of an impact on your daily life than who's in Congress bitching and moaning about who the Speaker of the House is.
I live in Texas. I live in Texas, but honey, this ain't no new realization. Okay, like this
Yeah.
is I haven't. I'm a lifelong conservative, and the only conservative I've voted for in the last probably 15 years has been Trump. You know what I mean? That's the last Republican that I think I voted. I mean, I think I voted down ballot when I voted in those two elections, but that's it. And so I mean, I got disillusioned with the GOP years and years and years ago when when healthcare was beginning to be an issue because I was trying to get insurance and couldn't and because of and this is how this is part of where I have a problem with libertarians. Like, I was having a problem getting insurance because of pre-existing conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the time, shit, they were considering pregnancy a pre-existing condition. You know what I mean? Like just stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like stupid shit. So I couldn't get insurance because I'd had babies before, and I'd started having babies when I was 17. So as an adult, I couldn't get. You know what I mean? I couldn't get insurance for something that I did as a child. You know what I mean? I know that sounds kind of silly, but it was just I didn't have to have insurance when I was 17. But when I got older and I was trying to get insurance, it was impossible for me to do.
Well, the
Um,
healthcare system in this country is fatally flawed, and
yeah.
I
So
I get a lot of flack even from other libertarians when I speak on this. Now, my background, I have an extensive background in healthcare and health insurance. That's actually my professional background is in those fields, and a lot of libertarians and conservatives and Republicans like to blame the healthcare issues we have in this country on Obamacare and the fallout from the Affordable Care Act. When in reality, it goes much further back than
it
that.
goes
Actually,
way further back than that. But
yeah.
I mean, I guess at the time, it's certainly then at the time when I was looking into people who to vote for, Rand Paul was very much against taking off pre-existing conditions. But for me, you can have a pre-existing condition before you're even born. So you're uninsurable for your entire life. So you just die. I mean, that to me, that just seems, ridiculous and cruel.
Well, I think the problem is that we've tied insurance to healthcare,
Right.
where they
And
shouldn't be tied together at
that's
all.
fair. That's fair. I don't think, I mean, even right now, even right now, my healthcare has nothing to do with insurance. But that was my issue from way back when. But Black people have been seeing this. They've been seeing this going on that that the Democrats and the Republicans are not representing our interests. Like and I talk to lots of Black libertarians because that seems to be where they've settled. And, although I'm still that staunchly conservative, I do feel like I don't have another choice. I'm going to have to vote libertarian because, you know, because, you know, fuck you, GOP. You know what I mean?
Uh,
Just go fuck
At the
yourself,
at
Chip
the end of
Roy,
the day,
you bastard.
at the end of the day, being a protest vote is one of the strongest things libertarians have going for them. But I do try and remind everybody that libertarians are just people at the end of the day as well. We have different political values and um, political architecture to our beliefs and other people. But at the end of the day, there's good libertarians and bad libertarians, just like there's good Republicans and bad Republicans and good Democrats and bad Democrats. You need to judge each candidate individually and at the level of the office they're running for as well. Like there may be a libertarian who's running for city council where you live down in Texas who ends up being a terrible NIMBY candidate whose view of property rights means that your community can't build anything or expand upon public services for people you want to do voluntarily. That's not going to be a good fit for your community if that's something you want.
Well,
Um,
there's other
yeah,
things that it's not a candidate issue. It's just the
right.
platform for libertarianism just in general, because I'm pro-life, and I don't think that prostitution should be legal, or drugs, or like, I am a conservative person. So I'm a conservative minded person.
Well,
So some of these things are not going to be, I'm never
Unfortunately
going to
for
get behind.
you,
hey,
yeah, unfortunately for you, I don't think there is a political home for a true conservatively minded person left in America
That's
because the
true.
Republican
That's
Party is not
100% true.
conservative.
well, and I will say this too,
Yeah.
Gabs. Like,
You said Donald Trump might have been the last Republican you voted for, but I wouldn't call him conservative by any fashion.
I wouldn't call him conservative, but I do think that at the core of everything that was important to me, and considering, I mean, taking into consideration, he spoke directly to me. I felt like he was in my living room when he was talking. So, he spoke directly to me, and we were homeless whenever he got into office. And within a year, we all were gainfully employed. So, and we were on our way to home ownership and all that stuff. I just bought a home yesterday. So,
Congratulations.
thank you. So I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, I mean, President Trump, I can go on and on. I can go on and on all day about the policies and policy changes that he implemented that directly impacted my family. And caught and was and made it possible for us to get out of poverty. And it's not bullshit either. It's the God's honest truth. But, you know, every time I look at my candidates, and any candidates, there you're absolutely right. I don't believe there is a political home for true conservatives, and I don't see that changing anytime ever again. I don't see that changing anytime, because Carlin says this all the time, and I'm a conservative, and I have to agree begrudgingly. But conservatives are fucking weak, and they don't fight.
Well, actually, they don't fight. That's one of the big things that I like to harp on is their refusal and inability to fight at the end of the day, to stand up for their beliefs. And what has separated the right and the left? It's not conservative versus liberal values anymore. It's the willingness to engage in direct action to me, because they largely believe the same things with a few minor differences when it comes down to it. But what made Black Lives Matter such an effective movement compared to the right wing gun rights movement is how they engage in protest and direct action. And to me, I think shining examples are in Virginia, we had the Million Gun March where they got 100,000 gun owners to march on the capital of Virginia in a peaceful assembly to show their support and their opposition to gun control in the state of Virginia. And they did so orderly and politely, and they even picked up their own litter and their own garbage and left no trace of their own footprint at the end of the day. And what happened, what we saw was Virginia lawmakers standing from the balcony, watching over, laughing at them as they passed gun control. because there was nothing to fear from 100,000 law-abiding gun owners who would never cross that line to make there be consequences for opposing them. And on the flip side, you have Black Lives Matters movement and the the movement from the left, where a small handful of 10 to 12 angry 20 somethings with demands will be willing to start a riot that burns their own city to the ground to make themselves heard. And there was consequences for not hearing them. There was consequences for disregarding their demands. And the left and the right in the halls of politics was not willing to deal with the consequences of ignoring the left because it was their constituents, the businesses in their districts, and their own homes that were at threat at the end of the day. Whereas the right is so focused on keeping the moral high ground that they'll never engage in direct action where there's consequences for ignoring their will.
Well, I can tell you what, I am the queen of nonviolent direct action on the conservative side because I am not afraid to go out there and match that energy. But I do, but I do, I have been struggling. Last night I went to an event, and I'm sitting here listening, and every time I go there, most of the time it's like God's waiting room. There's not anybody in there younger than 75, and those that are in there, they're saying shit like, well, you know what you need to do, you need to write a letter. And I'm just like, you are not for real right now. I heard 3 people talk about how they're writing letters and this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, you're not serious, right? Are you being for real right now? They, and so I mean, watching all of that and trying to, and I also believe in lawfare. That's also a tactic that is usually used by the left. But it just, I just, I'm really, and this is primarily why things are so bad in Texas and in Florida as it pertains to stuff that's going on in the education system. And with that stuff, it's because the same freedom that that they they want and like and observe for themselves, they also kind of have that live and let live attitude about stuff that shouldn't where it shouldn't be like that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just some things that just shouldn't be okay. And I fear my fear is that the same concerns that I have with conservatives, with Republicans, are also going to be there with libertarians, because libertarians have they have a liberty minded movement that would allow the same kinds of problems to exist. And I don't think that that's going in the right direction either. But that fuck you vote is hardcore real. I'm right there.
Well, I feel at the end of the day, one of the problems between maybe the more libertine or socially liberal libertarians and conservatives such as yourself is inherently a problem of a difference in morals and values. And that's a problem of the Big Tent ideology in the United States as a entity, as a political and entity, is itself a big tent where we have created a system whereby we have people like myself in New Hampshire and people like yourself in Texas who, even though we have dramatically and vastly different value structures, we're forced to live under the same rules and the same laws. And how is that representative or beneficial to anybody? If I want to live in a society that's more libertine, opening, and welcoming, and with legalized drug use and harm reduction and legalized prostitution, and you don't, then you shouldn't be forced to because I want to. And so I think maybe the national divorce model and people looking at a future where maybe the United States is no longer a homogenous, monolithic entity in the near future is going to be more productive towards individual liberty as defined by everybody, as opposed to individual liberty defined by a minority.
True that. True that. I mean,
So
All right.
breaking news. Speaking about how much
I see Carlin unmuted herself. I think she wants to chime in.
Speaking about how much Republicans suck, guess who just announced he's running for president? John Bolton.
Or not. Okay, well, hey, Keno, you had your hand raised a bit ago. Did you have something you wanted to prop up?
No, I think Carlin had it already under control, and also McCarthy picked up 14 additional votes right now. So we'll see what happens. That's it.
So looks like we're not going to be able to set a record. By the way, the record was in the 1800s of 133 votes for speaker. That took a grand total of 2 months. So anybody who thought Justin Amash had a chance, or I mean, heck, I joked I had as much a chance as Justin Amash, and I'd be a way more fun Speaker of the House.
Well, like also to be fair, sorry, Carlin, I heard you take a breath. I'm sorry about that. But also to be fair, within regards to those 2 months, 4 years later, we had the Civil War. So, and
nobody's saying we're far off.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I don't know what was going on. So I could hear you guys, but you couldn't hear me apparently. But
oh no.
So I just left and rejoined, and that seems to have fixed it. So breaking news. Speaking about how much the Republican Party sucks, John Bolton just announced he's running for president.
As a Republican?
Yes.
Girl, shut up. What?
I swear to God.
The mustache guy? The guy that looks like
the mustache neocon. Yes.
Were they not able to drag up John McCain's corpse?
Oh my God.
I mean, I think they're trying their best.
Like that is a wild. I mean, well, let's be honest. Like, I don't even think he's the establishment candidate anymore. I don't know where he fits in, even in the modern Republican Party. Like, certainly the Trump Republican Party doesn't want him. The true conservatives don't want him. Libertarians aren't going to swing that way for him. I mean, honestly, John Bolton might be the best Republican candidate for the Libertarian Party.
I don't necessarily disagree.
He's not going to be able to raise enough money to get past 2 months. Like, I'm not. That's the kind of comical nonsense that I kind of just don't even worry about, because he's not going to be able, like, that dude. And I think that, seriously, I think that at this point, people are looking at political candidates and going, if you have white hair, you're automatically not able to run for president. Like, I think people are just getting tired of this older is wiser model that we've been, subjecting ourselves to for the past, 30 years or whatever. We kind of got away from that with Obama and Clinton, but now I don't know. I think the boomers and the Gen Xers and whatnot are kind of saying, okay, let's be done with the old people now. I don't think he ain't gonna get nowhere with that. That's just ridiculously hilarious. I mean, that dude has just wasted so much money in our government. Like, seriously, I don't even know how in the world he could ever in 100 million years. Who is telling him? What are they telling him to make him believe that he could actually do this? Because he's one of
who knows? He's probably going to check from Raytheon. He's probably going to check from Northrop Grumman and the military-industrial complex. Like, I'll say it, as a single-issue activist whose big focus is war, and being an anti-war activist myself, I make no qualms about saying Donald Trump, at the end of his presidency, was the best president of my lifetime. I'm only 33 years old, but, from Bush Sr. to today, Donald Trump was the best president in my lifetime, because he is the only president in my lifetime that has not started a new war. And beyond that, he actually almost ended one. Joe Biden ended one, and I'll give him half credit for fucking up what Trump forced on him. But then we've seen Joe Biden's foreign policy lead to the pushing the entire world to the precipice of World War III. So I'm not going to give him credit where Trump earned it. But Trump, and even accidentally, because I think at some point Trump even tried to start a war with Iran and it didn't work. But Trump managed to go 4 years without starting a new war, and that's something that no other president in my life has done. In with John Bolton as his national security advisor in his ear for a solid chunk of that time, it's a miracle he managed to not start a new war. And there can be no reason that John Bolton is getting back involved in politics other than to try and start a new war. And that just terrifies me.
So January 6th, huh?
Well, back to my earlier point about the direct action. I think that's what made January 6th so special. It's the first time I can ever remember the right kind of adopting the tactics of the left. And while their motivations were backwards and asinine, the reality is they picked the right target and they instilled fear in the government. They instilled fear in those who claim to have power over you and me. They made those who built their life, their reputation, and their careers around telling others how to live their lives to their knees and made them quake and quiver. And I'm sorry, but there's nothing that brings me so much joy as seeing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in tears about how she feared for her life when a man dressed in a buffalo costume took a guided tour of the People's House.
I completely agree with you. And this is one of the things that I said in my live stream that I did the night after I got back from the Capitol, which is like it was actually really thrilling for me to see the right finally step up and do something. And like I had been touring around the country for months and months and months at that point, just going to rallies, trying to get them to do anything, and they refused to leave their house with a MAGA hat on, and they refused to come to rallies, and they refused to do anything, and they're still refusing to do it today. But I think like that January 6th was the one and only moment where I've actually seen conservatives and MAGA people and Republicans stand up and actually say, no, you will not treat us like this any longer. And I agree with you. I think that like, it was not done in the best way, but let's be honest, these people are basically beginners at doing this. They don't know how to do it like the left does it. I think that, they probably were trying to do like the best they can. And I don't think a lot of them planned necessarily to do something like that, but I thought it was beautiful. And one of the images that will stick with me for the rest of my life was that like I saw so many little old ladies that day storming the Capitol, like these little old grandmas. Some of them were like wearing their best fur because it was like really cold outside, and they were some of the most passionate people that were like, no, we're going to stand here, we're going to do what we want to do. They weren't engaging in violence or anything like that, they weren't breaking windows or doing anything like that, but they were adamant that they were going to be there, they were going to say what they wanted to say. And I think one of the things that's so upsetting to me since January 6th is that so many people on the right, because of how the January 6th prisoners have been treated, have developed this learned helplessness where they really just are acting like they're victims of the world. They can never do anything. They will always be prosecuted. They always be this, always be that. And it is that learned helplessness that has been just honestly a complete turnoff. They haven't done anything else like this since. I strongly doubt we'll ever see them do something like this again. And it's because they've convinced themselves that they are the poor victims of the world, and they have no control over anything. And I think that in order for, if the Republicans and the conservatives ever have any hope of being successful at all, they need to get over this learned helplessness thing and realize that they're the ones who convinced themselves they were helpless. They all stood up on January 6th. They struck the fear of God into the government when they did it. And then they said, we're sorry, we're sorry, we're sorry. We'll never do it again. Please don't hurt us. Please don't hurt us. They need to get out of their own way.
I feel like seriously, because last night I went to that event, and one of the guys there was the man who was standing next to that woman, Rosalie, the one who the cops beat to death and they don't ever talk about. And he was standing next to him. His name is let me see, Troy Tatum, I think his name is, or Tony Tatum, something like that. And I met him last night. And, you know, and I talk in these spaces all the time, like, with Alpha and all of those guys. And, they got into some real trouble, they're still fighting their legal battles and stuff. But the thing, when I talked to, what's that guy's name, Carlin? Not Eric, Eric, McKaylee or whatever. But
Matheny.
yeah, Matheny. When I talked to him and I said, y'all can put together these boat parades and all your Trump train parades and shit like that. But when I'm calling for y'all to come, stand in the gap so that Antifa doesn't kick my ass, then, it's crickets. So what's up with that? And they were like, the first thing he said was, well, as soon as we go out to protest, then they're going to shut our businesses down like they did with the Tea Party and use the IRS against us and this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, dude, you realize that the other side is whooping your ass in nonviolent direct action because you're scared. We're supposed to be the ones who aren't scared. I mean, I'm not, I don't understand. And that's kind of where I differ from so many people in the conservative party. And now they're using January 6th as their kind of, get out of fighting free card, right? So they're like, oh, no, we can't do that January 6th. We're all gonna be sent to the gulag. And so that, in their minds, that absolves them of having to do the work that it's going to take to fight these battles that need to be fought. And I just can't wrap my head around it. James Lindsay has been fighting back and forth with Christians for the last 2 days for some similar thinking.
Well, I think James Lindsay still has me blocked and won't even acknowledge my existence. So
Justin pissed James Lindsay off when he said that they were overusing the word groomer, like the left overuses the word racist. And quite frankly, Justin was correct, and James Lindsay got a little miffed and blocked him. That's another conversation for another day.
yeah, but no, I mean, to your point, like, people are afraid. At the end of the day, people are terrified and afraid of what's going to happen if they're the ones to stand up and stand out. And January 6th, as Colin said, it was little old ladies, it was LARPers and cosplayers, it was people who went out to have a good old time and got invited into the Capitol building, who are now being prosecuted and persecuted and threatened with life imprisonment and having their liberties stripped away simply for trying to have their voices heard and to seek a redress of their grievances. And, like, I don't know about y'all, but, like, here in New Hampshire, I'm no legal scholar by any means, but there's one particular piece of law that I always come back to, and to me, it's the most eloquent and beautiful piece of law ever written, and it's Article 10 of the New Hampshire State Constitution. And it reads simply, government being instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the whole community, and not for the private interest or emolument of any one man, family, or class of men. Therefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted and public liberty manifestly endangered, and all other means of redress are ineffectual, the people may and of right ought to reform the old or establish a new government. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive to the good and happiness of mankind. And this is listed in the New Hampshire Constitution's Bill of Rights as the right to revolution. Because at the end of the day, if the government is going to use its power to ignore people and to persecute people for the crime of speaking up and making their grievances heard and seeking a redress of those grievances, then all that is left, the only form of redress left for those people is to revolt, to cast out the old. to tear down the institutions that oppress them and to replace them.
Unfortunately, our country has become too cowardly to revolt. It'll only go to a certain point. And when you're seeing like even with the Black Lives Matter stuff, all you were really seeing was a bunch of hoodlums and looters and uh paid
Angry
protesters.
kids.
Yeah, paid protesters. Um, so it wasn't any kind of real revolution. We're much too cowardly for that. I mean, this is one of the points that you know that you know I'm going to bring up in my book. Like, I just can't believe that we're here. I can't believe that you know I said, and this is no joke. This is no shit. I called a bunch of formerly incarcerated women. I called them rowdy, and and some of them were in tears. These are hardened criminals. I mean, I said that they were rowdy, and that somehow, made them. One of them said she felt exploited. I mean, and I'm just like, seriously, is this where we're at? Where even the criminals are getting triggered by by some, and it wasn't even mean. Hell, I consider myself a rowdy Texan. You know, that's not even a bad. Doesn't even have a bad connotation. But everybody is so all up in their fifis that they can't look past all of the small inconveniences in their life. I mean, I uprooted my life and escaped with my daughter and fought the system in lots of different ways, sometimes having some real consequences to that, and some real sacrifices on my behalf. But when I did that, my son was being threatened with non-graduation. Well, that nigga graduated, didn't he? And my daughter was being socially transitioned and groomed into thinking she was a boy. And I put a stop to that. And the other day she ordered her point shoes so she can start ballet again. You don't we don't get nowhere in America by being cowardly. You get right up in bullshit's faces. You say, not today with that bullshit. And you better back right on up. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what Boston Tea Party people are looking down on us going, what the hell is wrong with them?
I've asked myself, as someone who grew up in Massachusetts and spent half my childhood in Fenway Park or on Yawkey Way, like I look back and whenever I visit Boston now, it's like, how can a city built around such landmarks? How can people who live every day of their life walking on their lunch break past the graves of John Adams and the memorials of the Boston Massacre and the beacons at Bunker Hill, like, how can somebody live amongst such history and be so wildly ignorant of the tale that history tells? And I don't know how Massachusetts has fallen so far and lost the spirit of revolution and the spirit of liberty. Like, Massachusetts was known as the birthplace of revolution, the cradle of liberty. And today is one of the most backwards socialist dystopias in North America. So, but hey, no, I do see we've had some new people join in, and some people who've been listening here for going on the full hour. Anybody wants to chime in, bring something up, pivot a topic of discussion, or just tell us how you're celebrating the holiday today, feel free to raise your hand, and I can add you as a speaker. I see Ken, you've been here the whole time. Jess, you just popped in. Rachel, you've been here for a while. Anybody who wants to pop in, we got plenty of room on the stage, and I'll add anybody as a speaker. This is a come one, come all. Carlin, anything you want to pivot here? Or?
I mean, like, I just keep thinking about how it really burns me how the right just capitulated to the narrative that the left wanted them to capitulate to immediately. Like, That night, they're going on the news saying, this is the most horrible thing, and all the people that were there were bad, and we denounce all of you. And it was like they threw their people under the bus immediately. And I just don't know how much people need to see of their own party just continuing to throw them under the bus over and over and over again before they wake up. Anyone who thinks that January 6th was the worst thing to happen in this country since the Civil War is a fucking retard. I said it. They're retarded.
Well, listen, discount John McCain can't see the whole picture. He has been blinded by his own partisanship, and we cannot trust Dan Crenshaw to speak for the right anymore.
Oh no, Dan Crenshaw's conservative card should be absolutely pulled. And like even the other day with this Kevin McCarthy speaker thing, he came out and said everyone who doesn't vote for Kevin McCarthy is a narcissist. Like, are you kidding me? And even like I was watching, it was so funny because I was watching MSNBC last night just to see what the MSNBC reaction was to the whole Kevin McCarthy thing. And guess what MSNBC was doing? They were shilling for the establishment Republican Party. MSNBC, the most far left of the far left, was shilling for the establishment Republicans. And I tweeted this out and someone responded to me and they said, oh, well, you know, for what it's worth, Carlin, Fox News is also shilling for the establishment Republicans. Like Brian.
But that's their job.
Well, yeah, but this is my point. Like Brian Kilmeade apparently was going around calling everyone who wouldn't vote for Kevin McCarthy an insurrectionist. And it's like, so I was like, so what you're saying is that MSNBC and Fox News are shilling for the exact same party. Doesn't that say it all?
Well, at the end of the day, we all know, and as libertarians have known forever, and as Gabs is coming around to realize, there is only one party, and they're the same at the end of the day. But popping up, Low Country Patriot, thanks for popping in. How are you celebrating the holiday today?
Well, I started celebrating early because my comrade over here decided to repost her stream. Carlin, that was so much fun, by the way.
Thank you.
You know, it's funny. I am a registered Republican. I got involved at the local level, and where I'm really seeing the most malfeasance is I'm extremely outspoken at the local level in my community. I'm in New Hanover County in North Carolina, and they don't like me. The establishment perceives me as a problem because, well, get to know me and you'll see why. I really don't hold back at all, and I have no intention of ever doing so because I'm pissed. I feel pretty politically homeless at this point. Gabs touched on a lot of things, and you know, as someone who fought the system, and when I say the system, like fighting for her children, and that's really what we're doing here. And they are doing their damnedest to create all of these narratives and sub narratives. I mean, I feel like the game space is like akin to like a Reddit trail. You know what I mean? Like going off in all these directions. But the uniparty, the collectivists in the uniparty operating, the political operatives within the GOP, they sabotaged Robbie Starbuck. They sabotaged J.R. Majewski, two of the strongest congressional candidates they had. J.R. was set to unseat Marcy Kaptur, a horrible Democrat who had been Congresswoman for 40 years in Ohio's Congressional District 5. Or no, 9. Was it? Yeah, OH9. And then Robbie Starbuck was in Nashville, and he was running for Congress in Tennessee 5. And the GOP, they took him off the ballot. They basically illegally removed him from the ballot, and he sued and won. And then the Tennessee GOP went back and took it to Supreme Court in Tennessee, and they ruled in favor of the GOP, taking him off of the ballot. And he was very outspoken about term limits and communism. His parents immigrated from Cuba, right? His family's from Cuba, and he's a huge children's rights and education activist. So I'm disheartened, but at the same time, I didn't have any unrealistic expectations. I knew what I was walking into when I got involved with the GOP. I became secretary of my precinct. I went to the state convention in North Carolina as a delegate. I wasn't familiar enough with parliamentary process, so I missed an opportunity to weigh in on the policy regarding critical theory and some of the education stuff. And I was extremely upset. And the chairman of our local party here in New Hanover County was like, well, what are you talking about? Why did you want to, what did you want to say? And I explained it to him. And when we broke for the day, for that day's business was over, he said, wait right here, I'll be right back. And he brings back the vice chair, Susan Mills of the North Carolina GOP, and introduces me to her. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Like, I felt like I was being set. I was like, it was a who's on first kind of moment. And then they introduced me to the guy who's the head of the chair who writes the policy. So the policy committee. And I never followed up, if for no other reason than I started to get this stay where I can see you vibe, meaning what they will often do is they will take people like us who are very loud and outspoken and try to put us, it's almost like appealing to the ego in a way, to try to put us in places where we are playing ball with limited mobility. And I thought about it and I meditated on it when I got back. And I realized that for me, the way that I can have the greatest amount of efficacy is as a grassroots type of person. And that's why I'm getting more involved with the work that Carlin is doing. And because now I want to take that out into my local community and educate these parents about what SEL really is, how they're doing this dialectical inversion stuff that James Lindsay so often speaks of. People like Gabs who have actually fought and won. You look at what happened in Texas, like everyone's like, oh, move to Texas. Texas is red. Move to Texas. Why the fuck would I do that when a Texas court is going to rule to allow some commie weirdo mother, mama bear my ass, take her kid to California to medically transition the kid at 8 years old? Why would I have, so tech people going on about, oh, Texas is the Lone Star State. They're the last frontier of Republican values. The fuck you talking about? No, they're not. So,
well, what are Republican values?
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
Thank you. Please drive through. Thank you. Here, let me put some more snacks in my hand that you can eat straight on my palm. Exactly. So I've grown so I always find it funny when people get mad at Carlin, for example, because she talks so much smack about conservatives. But is she wrong? You know what I'm saying? And I say that to people all the time. I'm like, look, if you don't like it, but if you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, then you actually are full of shit and don't care about the things you say you care about, because you're now engaging in identity politics because somebody hurt your feelings. You're catching fifis, as Gab said, and you don't want to hear that you played yourself on the abortion issue. You don't want to hear that you're playing yourself on the speaker shit. And now I come to find out, like I'm catching up Twitter because I just got back online. All these people flipped for McCarthy. And I'm like, damn, son. So what kind of deal with the devil got made? We're dealing with collectivists, okay? And the real people in the party, the real people out here who want to get change, it's going to be that whole struggle session bullshit where they're going to try to invalidate us from rise until rest. And it just depends on how much strength of character and fortitude and how much skin you have in the game. Like if you have skin in the game and you have a dog in the fight and you're willing to take the L's, you're willing to be criticized, you're willing to be canceled. Well, I've already experienced all those things, so I'm not afraid of being criticized and canceled. I don't give a fuck, pardon my candor. I want to do what's right, and I want to get these communists the fuck out of my face. How are we going to do that? By continuing to have conversations like this and by doing what we're doing and staying frosty, I guess.
Well, you have to, at the end of the day, the conversations like this on Twitter, connecting with people who already agree with us and sharing our values, like they don't actually accomplish much in terms of convincing our neighbors and convincing our communities. These conversations, what we need to get better at is not just having them online
without
with ourselves,
the echo chamber. Yeah, I fully agree with that.
Yeah, having them in uncomfortable positions,
which is what I'm doing in my local community. Yeah. And it is uncomfortable, but I'm pretty diabolical about it. And as much as like I've walked through so many fires already. Like here's a fun fact. In 2013, I got sworn in at the UN. Okay, this is it's at once like it's like a vapid humble brag combined with a hindsight never not 2020 kind of a little bit of a shame and vulnerability Brené Brown bullshit going on there too, because I got hoodwinked into getting involved with UNESCO. And I was the executive vice president of the inaugural board of the first ever independent state chapter in the history of the US Federation. And as soon as I saw what the fuck was going on, I was like, y'all can take me off all those emails, and I'm gonna be sitting shiva like someone in my Jewish family just died or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, get me out of here. I don't want any part of this. And I was removed from all correspondence. I had a very laissez-faire position because I realized I'd made a mistake. But what I learned from that is then I started digging later. By 2015 I was on it, looking at what the UN was doing, and looking at how critical theory and climate change, because let's see, United Nations Education, Science and Cultural Organization, the on soil initiatives were African American history, the real version of it, quote unquote, on US soil, and oceanographic research. Let's translate that word salad. African American history, the real version, that's critical theory, and oceanographic research, that's climate science, climate change. So I, I admit it freely now that I was involved with that briefly, because A, I have nothing to hide, but B, it serves as a teachable moment in retrospect. And when I admitted this to some rhino-y, like, we tried to censor Tom Tillis, and this one kid who was a campaign manager, he's a mess. He's an awful person. And I won't say his name, but he's disgusting. He's like this young fat fuck that lives here, and he causes a lot of problems. He's total rhino little baby shill. He's like one of the only people that didn't vote to censor Tom Tillis. So let that sink in. But when I started telling these people, because I admit it freely, because I know what I'm talking about. Like, I can go in and talk about SEL and talk about all this stuff that they're doing through the education system, and this Marcusean crap. And I know I'm right, and I know James Lindsay's right, and I know Carlin's right, and I know that we're on the right side of the fight. And I know that Gabs is right, and I know that Sloan Rothman is right. And the reason I know that is because I've been in the belly of the beast. I used to be a liberal. So they tried to launch a smear campaign on me in this Telegram chat, like the bowels of the internet, right? Telegram, blech. And they started calling me a leftist. I mean, it was disgusting. I was like, you people are gross. So you have to have thick skin. But anyway, I blather on.
I end up finding myself kind of on the outs, even with the right and conservatives, when I try and point out, like, I am actually a believer in climate change. I wish the left wasn't so, I'll use the bad word here, retarded about how they approach climate change activism, because we've seen all the evidence to suggest that the renewables they want to pursue, like solar and wind, are actually more harmful for the environment at the end of the day, with the lithium strip mining and the rare earth mineral mining, and how that destroys ecosystems. But the math serves that nuclear power is the safe, efficient, nearly renewable fuel that can reduce our carbon emissions and give us a clean electric future. And the left is just so scared of it, they don't want to even acknowledge that the answer to climate change is right in front
I
of them.
think that's one of the reasons why J.R. Majewski, to be honest with you, the NRCC pulled his funding after that smear for Marcy Kaptur. But the one thing that many people don't know about J.R. is that he was a pretty high-level nuclear energy sector executive, and had been for some time. And he was never not talking about the value add of developing and upgrading our own domestic system to be able to accommodate the forward movement of that as a potential, as an answer to fossil fuels. So I think that I agree with you on that.
You notice how Greta Thunberg dropped off the map as soon as she started supporting nuclear as well. So, all right. Hey, well, welcome to the stage, Rachel. How are you celebrating the holiday today?
I'm not doing much, just going about my day normally. I agree with you on being nuke pilled, and that's cool. And I just wanted to let you and Carlin know that I find this very valuable. I like to break my echo chamber and listen to different people, so thanks for putting this together.
Well, thanks for popping in and listening. And like I said, if anybody wants to add to the conversation or have anything they want to bring up, feel free to raise your hands. I don't actually know how many people we can have on stage as speakers on these. Like I said, this is the first time I've hosted a Twitter space. I want to start doing them more often. This is a tool we want to be able to keep using. And one of my pushes, I want to try and get Elon Musk to let us do these from desktop. If they want to compete with podcasting and bring podcasting more into the Twitter space, we should make all these tools available to people. It's not easy to manage on a cell phone. Yeah, anybody else wants to chime up? You have something to say? Those who've been listening the full hour and a half at this point, or just new to here, let me bring in. We have Evelyn. How are you celebrating the holiday today? Oop, I think you muted yourself, Evelyn.
Yeah, so I don't know how exactly you would celebrate a event like this.
That's the fun part. It's not a real holiday. Well, it is. It's actually 12th night. If you're practicing Irish Catholic or Irish Protestant, technically tonight is the 12th night of Christmas and the end of the winter holiday season. So we
It's
can't call it
also Three
holiday.
Kings. The Spaniards,
Absolutely.
yeah, Three Kings.
Yeah, but I like to say I'm not a holiday person. I tend to get depressed in the winter holidays, and it's not a time of year I find particularly joyous. I'm not the normal type of person. I get that, but I've taken to calling this my holiday. Because it's something as real as Valentine's Day and the commercial holidays that the corporations in America have created and propped up to push spending and consumerism, but the left is absolutely trying to turn this into a holiday to remember the attack on our democracy. And if we're going to be forced to remember it, I want to remember it fondly.
Yeah, and like I commented something earlier that people are trying to compare this to 9/11, and I'm just like, that's just so disrespectful.
And yeah, comparing it to 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or any of the actual direct attacks, or the War of 1812, where the White House and Washington D.C. actually was burned to the ground, is absolutely disrespectful to the history of the country and the history of the democracy that these people claim to be supporting against these attacks. But I myself am no big fan of democracy. I don't think it's a system that represents human freedom or gives human will the freedom to thrive. But I'm an ardent black-pilled anarchist in these manners myself. But the whole point of today is to just have fun with it. Don't let ourselves get bogged down with the negativity and the fear mongering of the political elite. And remember that not 2 years ago, they were afraid of us.
Yeah, which is why I'm glad I don't go to school until the 9th instead of today, because they would be talking about it like nonstop. And I had a professor like that, and it was just like, could you stop mentioning this? It's not the only thing that's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Joshy, welcome to the stage. How are you celebrating the holiday today?
How you doing? So today's my birthday.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you. Shout out to Gabs when she came to Rhode Island. I got to hang out with her. How you doing, Gabs?
Happy birthday, sweet chicken.
Yeah, thank you. So it's with January 6th. I remember that day. I work in cannabis. I'm a cultivator, so I had lost my phone for most of the day, and I remember when I eventually found it, I had all these texts, and that was around when I had started. No, I hadn't started my activism. I think it was in the summer with the in Rhode Island, the mandates, especially the nurses were mandated around and like officially went into like October. So I had gotten a lot of texts from my friends who were, more leftist that were like, "Hey, I'm sorry, buddy, that this had to happen on your birthday." And I had already been a little bit red pilled, so I remember that's at the time that my friends didn't know that I was gonna, quote unquote, go off the deep end. And I was just like, yeah. But I remember seeing that, and actually, I know a woman in Massachusetts. I think her name is Sue Ianni. She just got sentenced to go to prison, I think, for like 3 weeks, which is obviously not bad compared to some people. So yeah, it's been a strange journey watching all of this, but I don't know. I don't know how to speak about it with people now. You know, I know with my close friends and the people in the know about it, but you know, I still, because I never left my leftist friends behind. I still love them a lot, and I try to, you know, love people as best as I can. And I just don't know how to. I don't know what to do with it. I just either remain silent or just change the topic. I wonder. I wonder how everyone deals with it in here with people that they know and love that still kind of either want to bring it in your face or however. What do you think?
I think that's an incredibly difficult position to be in, and as I had said to Low Country Patriot, it's important to have these conversations in difficult situations like she does in her community in her grassroots activism, as maybe it's important for you to do with your friends and family. um, I'm a little bit privileged here. Me and Carlin, we live in a great community here in New Hampshire where I'm surrounded by people who share our values. Like I'm a member of a community center that's only open to libertarians and anarchists and people who already share our values and share our opinions. So it's a lot easier for someone like me to accidentally insulate myself into a real world echo chamber, even once I get offline. But the difficulty is there for people like you, and I get that. I grew up in Massachusetts. I actually grew up on the Rhode Island border in North Attleboro myself, where it is incredibly difficult to like be the outsider and to be the minority, and that's something we all have to face because let's face it, we are a minority. People who value human freedom is a minority viewpoint and it's a minority value set. And Carlin's the psychologist here, so I'm going to ask her to actually give advice on this, not me. But like, how do you maintain those relationships, like in the face of such an overwhelming difficulty? Like I said, I'm speaking from a place of privilege where I don't have to. But Carlin, I mean, what advice would you give?
I mean, I think it's really tough. You know, my mother was texting me about a week ago, and you know she's older and like all this stuff, and but I think I tweeted something to the effect of like texting with my mother was a bizarre experience for me because it's kind of like you're trying to communicate with someone who just lives in a completely different media created reality, and nothing you say is going to change their mind because you know she's older, like you're set in her ways. I don't even like I don't want to get into the days worth of arguments that it's going to require for her to even get a nugget of what I know about what's going on in the world. And so it's kind of like you just have to pretend that what that person thinks is real because pretending what they think is real is actually just easier. It's like the path of least resistance. So I mean, I agree with you, Justin. I feel for people like that. I think that we are very spoiled living in New Hampshire, and I think that it is personally hard for me to relate to people who don't who don't see things like we do, I guess. And I don't mean to say that to make that seem like I'm all high and mighty or something, because I don't think I am. But it really is, it's like you're speaking a completely different language than these people. And I think that you have to be the best decider of who you allow in your life and who you don't, and who you're willing to make these concessions for, and who you're not. For me personally, just because I have gotten so used to being around people who I feel like I have more in common with, I have no tolerance at this point for people who want to continue to push this narrative or want to call me a terrorist or any of these things. It's just like it is unnecessary to be around these people, and this is why I'm not very much in favor of like secession in New Hampshire. I don't know that it would work in the rest of the country, but I also think that, I'm completely in favor of people just forming more insulated communities based on their personal set of values, and just leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. I think that's the only way moving forward it's going to work, because the media has totally mind fucked a large portion of the population to believe in a reality that is not true at all. And I don't think that any of us are in a position to be able to deprogram, for lack of a better word, the people that believe in that. If they want to come around, if they want to wake up like I did, I woke up 3 years ago. Like that does happen, but it is rare. And I think it's going to keep getting more rare. And so what I would say is kind of like what you said, Justin, is like, find communities of people that that understand your point of view, and be judicious about where you put your time and your energy. And if you have people in your life that are like agree to disagree, that's a very different thing than people directly working against everything you believe in all day, every day, and painting you as a horrible person. And so it is a tough situation to be in, but just know there are communities out there for everyone, and maybe get thee to New Hampshire as quickly as possible.
Yes, the Free State Project evangelism is always a solution for this. And if you guys aren't familiar with the Free State Project at fsp.org, or if the values of libertarianism are something that appeal to you and you don't feel at home where you are, um, go to libertynh.us and you can actually download a free copy of my new book, Live Free and Thrive, 101 Reasons Why Liberty Lives in New Hampshire. Not trying to make money. You can buy a paperback on Amazon if you want, but I put the PDF up there online for free for everyone to read, because I just want to share the information. And I don't believe in intellectual property, so feel free to distribute it as much as you want to. But a great and compelling case. I mean, especially if you're in New England already and you're in a hellhole of one of the 5 states in New England that doesn't respect your individual freedom, it's a real easy move to make. And you can still make it. It's only a 2-hour drive for me to go visit family in Rhode Island. And I still do it occasionally, but I get to live amongst people who share my values, and really is a place of privilege to be able to do that. And I do not miss living in Massachusetts. I can say that much.
Yeah,
I will
I'll
agree
actually.
with that. I would agree with that, Josh. Like, you know, you live in a real you live in a very woke place. And, you know, I've been experiencing that very same kind of irritation. Like, you know, and so I just bought a place not far, but close enough so that I can visit, but I don't have to listen to that shit every day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be involved in that all the time. And, you know, I mean, being in Rhode Island, first of all, Rhode Island is like, seriously, it is so beautiful. And I hated to leave. Like, I didn't want to even come home. I was like, I want to be here. Like, I really loved it in Rhode Island. But, you know, from what I can see, New Hampshire is not very different. Not that different an environment. So if you're around people who are more like you, but you can get back home whenever you need to, you know, that's a great a great compromise, you know. I'm an atheist, and I grew up in you know, like I don't know, I told somebody else on the buckle of the Bumpkin Bible Belt. And so, you know, it's hard to be that in that kind of environment. So it was good for me to get away to Las Vegas to see the difference that living in a different environment can be. But at the heart of it, I still miss my family. I still miss being a Texan. I still miss all of the things that being in Texas had to offer. So because I was so excited about Rhode Island, and I was so just like in awe of like living in a on a like in a beach community type small town, I moved to a place right here in the Gulf. I bought a house right here in the Gulf that is very similar to that environment. So you can like what Justin said. You can you can move a little ways away to suit your day-to-day needs, but still stay close to the people that you love and continue to love them without resentment, and continue to you see them on holidays, and if they need something, you're close enough to deal with it, or if you need something, you're close enough to get to them or whatever. But you know I was miserable. I was miserable when I tried for so long to try to get them to just kind of take the live and let live attitude about things as I did. It made it made me really resent them, and it made me essentially break off all contact and not have any communication with family members for years. But since I've been here, similar problems have started to arise, and my maturity in this area has been beneficial because I've been able to compartmentalize that place in my life and say, okay, I want to move to a place that is um more conducive to the way that I want to live in a day to day daily, and not have to be bombarded with these struggles in the environment that I'm in. But I also don't want to separate myself from my family the way that I had for the past 20 years.
And what you touched on there, Gav, the compartmentalization, I think this is something that's becoming increasingly more difficult. Like, I remember a point in my life, not even that long ago, where not everything had to be political. Like, I could have friends and friend groups that were built around hobbies and things that we went out to do. I used to go play Magic at a local card shop every Friday night with a group of friends, and it was completely apolitical. I don't even know those people's politics. But I think COVID and the lockdowns really forced everybody to put their politics up front and on display, and created a new dividing line for everybody, and that really drew lines in society. And we've kind of lost the beauty of being able to compartmentalize your political and your social lives away from each other. And it's so much harder nowadays to maintain those relationships with people who just fundamentally do not share your values at the end of the day.
I think that's true. I think that's true. But at the same time, I think that it was more difficult, probably, I would say, 6 months ago. But now I think that I think that because more people are starting to move more to the center and see how crazy shit is really getting, that they're going, okay, well, maybe we can just go back to not talking about our politics. You know what I mean? And kind of just they're taking a position of being able to say, you know what, let's not even discuss it. Let's just have hot dogs. You know what I mean? I think that it's getting back to that place, especially since you're seeing stuff like, I mean, like with Josh, with mandates being lifted and those kinds of things. That was a big hot button issue for him. For me, it was indoctrination. But I don't have to fight like I did in the very, very beginning, because people are starting to really wake up. Even people who were classical liberals, who just could not see it. They just couldn't see it. Um, I think Carlin got very high after I told her about some of the things that I discovered as I was fighting my way through, understanding some of the transgender stuff. Um, and I think it was sitting in the middle of her living room floor getting high, because she was just blown away by the whole
No,
thing.
I was having a panic attack.
A panic attack. Okay,
I
excuse
was having a panic attack.
Okay, having a panic attack, whatever it was traumatizing for me as well. But just, I mean, but we're talking about those of us who are not complete and total assholes had always tried to be kind. But then when you see that ain't that ain't exactly the that ain't exactly the pitch that they're giving us. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then looking into some of that stuff even more deeply, and explaining it to people, and then they go, oh, well, wait a minute, that ain't right. And so I think the more people are starting to peel back the layers, the more it's bringing more and more people closer in towards the middle, even if they are still very, very much polar opposite. And I think that that's making them go back to saying, okay, well, maybe 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 we'll just have cake, or maybe we'll just open up our presents and not go into the politics as much. I think that's we're going to be able to start compartmentalizing our lives again, like real dysfunctional humans, like we were before, pretty soon. That's my view.
Dysfunction is one of the core elements of humanity, I think. Absolutely. We need to embrace that. Heidi, thank you for joining in today. How are you celebrating the holiday out on the left coast?
Yeah, happy January 6th. Can you guys hear me? Actually, I don't even know. Yeah,
Yes.
okay, good. Um, yeah, how am I celebrating? I mean, I'm working. I'm not celebrating yet, but if you got any ideas? Anybody have any like fun January 6th party
I mean,
ideas or
direct action is always a great way to celebrate.
really today? I mean, I feel like I don't know. Should probably pick a different day, maybe. I don't know, throw them
Listen,
off
we,
a little
we can
bit.
only have so many holidays.
I know. Yeah, what can you do? You know, but yeah, interesting combo so far. Glad you're having a space. Nice to see everybody. See Carlin there. Not sure who else I see, but yeah, it's crazy. This is just a weird day, but I'm just yeah. Anyway, happy January 6th. I can just piss everybody off, and I feel like I should be wearing like a I don't know American flag robe or something, just like walking around and you know freaking
Well,
everybody
I,
out in
I
Portland or something.
well, I think you might actually have maybe a better perspective to add to this current conversation, at least talking about like how to maintain relationships with people that are like strained politically. As someone who's come more recently from the left, like in kind of your own little red pill journey to get into where you are. I mean, I've joked the story I want to see is how your wife has dealt with you the past 2 years as you red pilled yourself, um, and how she's tolerated that. But like you've gone from being a kind of a moderate progressive to kind of like the red pilled, like my favorite turf on Twitter. I mean, like, how do
Yeah.
you maintain the relationships that you had within your community and your families and friends in the wake of like your very, very public kind of political transformation?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's tough. There's some people that I just can't have relationships with anymore, like, you know, friends that are just they're just too sucked into, you know, the matrix and it's sad and I just can't really talk to them at least about anything political anymore. So then I just have to make a decision. I mean, I have one of my best friends who's super left wing, like basically it's socialist, and you know, we'll have really long conversations. Like the turf issue kind of actually came up. You know, she called me one night and we're kind of weird. We don't talk very often, but when we do, we like stay up all night and talk for like 9 hours straight. And so that's kind of what happened. Is she brought up something like she was having a party for her friend who was trans, like a trans woman, and you know they were I don't know getting their bottom surgery or something. They're raising money for that, and she like asked me to like donate, and I was just like no like I'm not gonna do that. And then she was saying something else and she's like yeah you know like they're a girl like you know like a girl like just like they've always been a girl. And I'm like no I don't know what that means. Like what does that mean that they've always been a girl? Like I mean like that's not really a feeling, you know. It's either a reality or not if you're female or not. And then it turned into like a 8 hour like stay up all night conversation. And you know we didn't come to like an agreement, but it was a very high level like you know intellectual kind of conversation because we both went to UC Santa Cruz. We were both really left wing. You know, she was trying to argue that I'm like a postmodern feminist, like a third wave feminist, and I'm like I'm not. Like I'm a you know more second wave you know radical feminist. This is what I believe. And yeah, we went on and on and on. At the end, she was just like. She's like, I love you, Heidi. Like, we don't agree, but like, you know, you actually have something to back up your points. And I appreciate that. And I just love having these like debates and talks with you. And I think that that's really great if you can have that type of relationship with somebody. It's not always possible. You know, some people aren't able to separate your relationship or your friendship from their beliefs, and that's unfortunate. But I think that it depends on the situation. Like, do you have the mental and emotional bandwidth to try to have those types of long form conversations with the people that you love, that you do, you know, value the relationship that you have, and are you willing to do that? Are you willing to do that kind of work? And I don't think most people have like enough bandwidth to do that a lot. So sometimes you just have to end the relationship if it's not that deep. But I think that for the ones like family and like best friends that you've had for a long time, I think that they will usually hear you out if you come at it from like an empathetic you know kind of perspective and you're willing to like sit there with them for you know hours if needed and have those conversations. So it's tough to kind of navigate. Yeah, I've lost a lot of friends. I've tried to keep the friends that I could. I'm sure there's people that hate me now that I just haven't said anything and just disappeared off the map. As far as like family, I just try to not talk about it, to be honest, because it's like it just goes in a horrible direction, and I can't really, get a new family at this stage of my life or anytime. So yeah, it's a mix. It's just a real mix. But I guess I would say I just try to keep the relationships that I value the most, and do what I can there, and the rest I can just let go of because it's not worth it.
Isn't it, Heidi? This is Gabrielle Clark.
Hey there.
Because my hey, honey, my other account.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, yeah, my other account got nuked.
Hey,
But
Gabriel.
hey, you know, being a radical feminist in this time, because I work with the Rad Femmes for all the way through the summer with Kelly J and Jennifer Thomas and Amy Susan, all of that, and um working with all of these, working, and even I met with here in Texas with Megan Murphy and all them, and and one of the things that I noticed about their brand of turfing, right, versus my brand of turfing, was that they were all left before. You know what I mean? Like they were all liberals
Yeah.
anyway. And so when I got to this last protest, when I got to this last speaker's corner, and I'm looking at all of this stuff. There was one turf that she got up, and her name is Michelle Evans Taft, and she ran for some office up in Round Rock, I think it was. And she said she's a trans exclusionary Republican feminist. And I was like, damn it, why didn't I think of that shit? Like, but I think, but like when you were talking about how you're able to, you have that one issue that you're just hard lining on. But I think as far as families go, and as far as friends go, that probably is why we'll be able to have those connections again, and be able to separate, because most people, when they come from the same family, or when the friends that they choose have the same values that they do, even if there's one hardline position that they can't agree on. And I think that Trump just kind of blew that whole thing out of the water. But I don't think that something like the transgender issue is as polarizing, or any other issue that we've had since is as polarizing. So if you're already established as being on the same level politically and ideologically, then you're more likely to be able to compartmentalize if there's those one hardline issues, like because I am still very much very turfy, even though there are some of my conservative Republican friends who are like kind of take the attitude, well, I don't give a fuck what they do. You know what I mean? I'm like, wait a minute now. And so just like on the left, the liberals are kind of like, oh, we need to support them because and all this. On the right, it's more kind of the attitude that I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. Let them do whatever the hell it is they want to do. And if kids trans themselves, that's their parents' problem. That's the conservative outlook on that. And so
Yeah.
being a hardcore turf, we face a hardcore turf in the conservative side. We face a different kind of problem,
Yeah.
but with the same outcome. But I think that's one of those things that can be transcended. The Trump probably
Yeah.
that couldn't.
Yeah. I think it's a very unifying issue because I mean, and they call it peaking, and like the turf community. I'm sure you've heard that. You peak people, you
Oh
get them
yeah,
to
we
be aware of it. And that's a lot of it is just like people aren't aware that it's an issue. So on both sides, right? Like you talk about like the left and they're like, oh no, we love them. They're part of LGBT, whatever. Like let them do whatever. And then you have, the conservatives that are like, I don't care what it's like less than 1% of the population, and it doesn't concern me. Like, let them do whatever. And so I think you have to peak everybody on the issue, because I think it is one of the most important issues going on right now, if not the most important, because most of the things that are happening are permanent and can't be taken back. And you're having like massive effects, on both women and children. So I think that it's an issue that I've definitely become willing to take a hardline stance on. I was actually inspired by one of my other left wing friends. She's very left on pretty much every issue, but she piqued me and made me aware that this was an issue. I didn't really think about it either. It's not something you think about every day if you're not, trans, or you're not like directly connected with that community every single day. You don't really think about this as an issue. But once you're peaked, I don't think you could really go back. I mean, that's the point, right? Is and then you have to you have to take that stance on some issues and just be like, no, this is a hard line where I'm drawing it, and like this is not acceptable or okay, regardless of ideology.
Can I jump in for a
I
quick
think
sec?
that's true.
Gabs and I had an interesting exchange the other day, because I was saying how one of the things that I'm having a problem with is the erasure of lesbian culture, right? Because they're really suffering a lot. I'm TERF all day. I'll be the first to admit that. And I'm straight. And so a lot of conservatives, I've caught this bit of like, I catch the vibe sometimes, like they're probably like, oh, she's like low key gay, or, whatever. They are like, I can see it in their faces and the way they respond. But one of the things that I've been
You're totally gay for me. I just know that. I know this. You're totally gay.
So I have spent a lot of time digesting and internalizing and doing a distillation for my own best understanding. And the two content creators that I've really been drawn to are Benjamin Boyce and Buck Angel. And the reason for that is because I've been able to experience the voices, Benjamin's calm versations of the detransitioners, but also he did this one interview with a woman, I think she's in New York. She was one of their flying monkey, like talking heads. And so a lot of these schools, like Carlin did a thing, she did a stream probably about a month ago of an elementary school Zoom call it was focused on transgenderism and how to talk to elementary school kids. And there was this girl who was an activist, who was a consultant, and she's like in her 30s, but she's like, oh yeah, I identify as a 16-year-old skater boy and surfer boy, but I don't skate and I don't surf. And it's like, these people live in fucking Narnia, okay? Like, clearly in the Narnia that's your fucking head, it's okay to just lie to children. And it's one thing to tell kids, you can be anything you want, like the sky's the limit, Biggie style. It's another thing to flat out misinform them to their detriment, including but not limited to gender affirming care. And in the gender critical space, what I've learned is that conservatives, because of the moral high ground that we discuss often in Carlin spaces of the conservative, far right, conservative Christian demographic, James Lindsay just tweeted, go look, today, about I'm starting to believe that Christians just want to be, they don't really want the information, they just want to be mad. And that's actually very true. And that's a total sub. And a lot of people, I just posted a big thing on my Facebook about it. I'm going to catch flack for that. This is what, me being the provocateur, but I do it because that's what I'm up against. Like, okay, fine, I understand that you want to get the books out of the libraries, but if you're focusing on those books and not who signed off on the purchase of the books, why the books are there, what the books represent in terms of the getting back to the dialectical inversion, getting back to the manipulation, the Maoist style thought reform. It's all part of the game. And so my turf ass over here is trying to say to my fellow conservative, peers, you all are going to have to open your eyes and open your minds and your hearts and stop being so critical of gays and stop being so critical of people who want to be trans. Buck Angel will come right out and tell you, I'm a biological female living as a man. I socially transitioned and I'm a medical patient for life. Leave the fucking kids alone. But if you're so against it, if you're going to pull a Bryson Gray and be like, you're all going to hell, my guy, and you're just not even going to leave any room for dialogue, then you're no longer living in the solution, you're actually part of the problem. And so,
Well, I want to just like pop in on this because you said that James Lindsay said Christians like just want to complain. That's not it. It's that they have a persecution
yeah,
complex.
exactly. Yeah,
They
translated,
want
sure. Bingo.
they, they want people to come at them so that they can feel like they are sacrificing, like Jesus
Martyrdom.
Christ did on the cross.
And that's
And
a form of spiritual bypassing. That's gaslighting, right?
Is that exclusive to Christians, though, or is that even exclusive to the right wing or the left wing, or is that just more of a human condition? Because we even see libertarians try and martyr themselves and make themselves a victim to have the moral high ground for their arguments. I think that's just something people do, not necessarily Christians.
Well, I don't think it's exclusive to any group, but I will say I have seen it more pronounced with Christians because Christians will actually, and I'm not saying everyone, I'm about to make a generalization. I can't account for every single Christian that might be listening right now. All right. But like, I have seen so many people actively say, we were meant to be persecuted. I welcome the persecution. Persecute me, persecute me. It's almost like they're having an orgasm from the amount of persecution that they're getting. And they really do get off on it. And I think that this is something that is unique to Christians because it is taught to them in church that they are going to be persecuted for their beliefs like Christ was persecuted on the cross. And so I agree with you that there are other groups that martyr themselves, but Christians have this unique thing as part of their belief system.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I grew up in Christian church and I went to an evangelical high school, actually. And one of the things they would talk about constantly is the secular world. This is like the secular world, and they're going to try to get you and pull you in, to the secular world and introduce you to like all these things. And and it just made you want it more. It's like the DARE program where they're like, don't do drugs, and they're like, there's these things that get you high, and you're like, what is high? I could feel good. What is that stuff? Like, how do I get it? It was sort of like that. It's like the secular world. I'm like, what the hell is the secular world? Like, it sounds like kind of fun and interesting. So yeah, there's definitely that vibe for sure that happens on the right, and it's really weird. It's weird to like come full circle on that because imagine like you're gay in high school, people are talking about the secular world, and they kind of like mean you in like some way, and then you go to the left and you're like in college and everything's great and you have like gay rights and gay marriage, and then it comes all the way back full circle and you're like, oh wait, no, I'm not like, I'm not down with this. And then you have to go back and talk to these people that are evangelicals. Like, I've actually literally started new relationships with people I went to high school with that I probably wouldn't really be friends with back then, but now we're like, we're kind of on the same page on a lot of these issues. But then they'll suddenly take it a little bit too far, like, oh yeah, gay people are immoral or something. And I'm like, I'm gay, right? And like, oh no, I didn't know that based on like your tweets and opinions. And I'm like, okay, but like this is not how this works here. Like, so yeah, it's a very interesting kind of full circle to go through, to be like, okay, I'm rejected by this group, and now like they're willing to accept me because we agree on a particular issue, and we're coming full circle.
Heidi, maybe it's just your eyebrows.
You're lucky you're just gay. If you're atheist, then shit, you're like, damn. I mean, my son is gay, and he's never had a problem with Christian. But when they found out that he was an atheist, literally, you get, like they don't. My grandmother literally told, after my husband died, she said, well, people would be more willing to help you if you wouldn't go around telling everybody you're an atheist. Like I have 4 small children, all under 10. And I was 26 years old and my husband died. Like that, you know what I mean? Like this is the kind of, because like Carlin was talking about with the martyrdom and the they also have this missionary spirit too. Like if you need help or you want help, then you have to sit and listen to the word, listen to the gospel. And if you're not going to be willing to do that, then you don't really want help. And I think that comes into this. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it comes into this.
Well, that's the same with the left, right? It's like the same thing, because they want to evangelize you too, and then they'll help you. Like, if you go and say like anything, like if I went and said tomorrow, oh, you know what, I was wrong, like I'm fully on the left, like then suddenly like I would have all this support like from the left again, because it's just about beliefs with them, right? It's like it's not based on principles or values or reality. It's just like, well, what do you believe? And that's so shallow, because you can just say you believe anything or change your belief, overnight. It's not really based on anything or any, inherent principles.
Yeah, I think the heart of the issue for me was in my 20s. I read a book called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. I don't know if anyone's heard of that book. I would check it out though. It's
I
really
think Justin fell
incredible.
asleep.
And
Oh no, I'm
hmm?
still here.
um, and in my 20s, I remember that I struggled a lot with understanding, like me becoming awakened to how the culture is just awful and damaged and deranged, and how do I deal with that? And I wasn't
Okay,
political,
chickens,
so I
I gotta
wasn't
go.
into
I
like
gotta,
this.
somebody broke into my car, and I was on the phone for 30 minutes with on hold with the police for 30 minutes. So I'm gonna go
You'll
and
talk
I
to you
know,
soon.
right? Sit on hold again for another 30 minutes. The legislative session is starting in Houston on the 10th, and so I'll be going and spitting fire at the legislators again, like I do. So y'all stay tuned for that. That ought to be exciting.
Bye,
And I'll
Gabs.
I'll talk to y'all later. We'll see you later, honey.
Bye, Gabs.
All right, you were saying, Josh?
Oh, I was just saying that for me, the struggling in my 20s, dealing with just being awakened to how our culture is really um what's the deranged is not the word I'm looking for. But
It's not the
all
wrong word.
it's not the wrong word, but reading books like John Taylor Gatto, Dumbing Us Down, learning about the education system, obviously learning about war, me dealing with my own, I guess, trauma. It's traumatic. The culture is really traumatic. And I really struggled hard until I had some psychedelic experiences and other where I realized that the world outside of me is not separate from me. Um, and I think one of the problems with most people is that they don't realize, to get woo woo, they don't realize the mystical unity of self and other, or self and everything else that's other. Christians have such a fucking hard time with this. And I wish people, I always tell people my belief with Jesus is he was a mystic and not the savior of mankind. If Christians could drop Jesus as savior of mankind, they would drop needing to fucking change everyone to their worldview. And it's so hard for them. It's my one gift, not even a gift. It's my one dream for Christians is to drop Jesus as savior of mankind, and they could allow, right? Because we get the competing messages of Jesus as this guy who was with prostitutes, was with the downtrodden, but yet they can't inherit that message because we live in a schizophrenic society that hates the other. And so I struggled with that for a long, long, long time, and it's the one thing I wish people could experience in their own way through the lens of their own beliefs. Obviously, I don't want to become authoritarian about this. So yeah, that's just what I think.
Well,
Josh,
I mean, if Christians could drop Jesus, then they'd just be Jews and have a whole other argument for being persecuted. But if you want to pivot to psychedelic
totally agree with you
experience,
that like if everyone just did psychedelics, the world would be
oh
better.
yeah, I've got a running joke, and it's only a half of a joke that a high school graduation requirement should be a night of mushrooms.
I agree.
Oh, that's a funny story, actually. I actually
Heidi,
did I actually did ecstasy for the first time at my high school graduation. And like this is like a Christian like conservative school. And other people had like tried to drink a lot before this because we did a lock, like they locked us in to like a bowling alley place for like our grad night, right? And I was like, that's stupid. Like you guys are just gonna try to drink like a lot and then go in. Like you're either gonna drink too much and get sick or like whatever, like not drink enough, you're not gonna last the whole night. And I'm like, so I'm just gonna get like this pill and like be rolling. I'm like waiting in line and it like starts to hit me and like and people are literally like puking, like trying to like get into like our grad night. And I'm like, see, haha. Like I'm not gonna be like I'm not puking, and it just starts hitting me. And we go in, and they have like all this food out for us, and I'm like, okay, now I might puke. It's like I'm like, like I can't smell any like food right now. And it was just like hilarious because I'm just like hugging everybody and like I love you guys. People that like I never talked to in high school like at all. They're like, what is the deal with her? I mean, it's fun. It was cool, but yeah, I think it really was transformational. I think for me because I let go of like a lot of high school trauma with all these people that were like assholes to me, and it just like just total dickheads. I like let it all go that night, so I highly recommend. Yeah, I grad night psychedelic trip.
I'm just here for the psychedelics, insurrection, and reading the Bhagavad Gita.
I mean, you can't do much better than that. I will say psychedelics can be dangerous, and I will give people a warning here. They can totally destroy your life by convincing you need to do something and hyper motivate yourself to that. I've told my story of how I got political a lot in the past, but from working as a government agent, being in the army, and working on basically one of the largest domestic security missions that the Army's ever done, where we instituted martial law in Boston, and I was involved in that after the Boston Marathon, to having an experience where a protester woke me up, and a protester did something that made me realize that we were the bad guys, and I left military service and started getting active political. It was after a psychedelic trip a few years ago on LSD with a friend where, like, I had the realization that like nobody else is doing what needs to be done, so I have to do it. And sometimes I wonder if that ruined my life by forcing me into the fight full time, where I convinced myself that I had to pick up the banner and fight for freedom where no one else was. And it can be dangerous to convince yourself that you need to do something.
Well, I
You'll
think
never
there's something to
regret
be
it.
said about it's like with psychedelics you get a completely different perspective on the world and reality and this existence and how we're all connected and what your purpose is in life and what you're supposed to accomplish here, which is very very different than what a lot of us have been taught. And so I do actually think there's something to be said for that, but I think everything is a matter of perspective, and you could see it as ruining your life, or you could see it as this is the path I'm supposed to be on, and fuck all those people who are still asleep, because they're never going to do this, they're never going to see this, they're never going to I think for me, like, I've had to kind of perceive, and this is no shade on people who haven't done psychedelics, because I think you can get this perspective without them, but I think I have to perceive them as just being asleep, to be honest, because they haven't seen what I've seen, and they're on a different journey than I am, and they're supposed to do different things, and maybe they are supposed to just be blind sheep in this lifetime, who knows. But I think without kind of patting ourselves on the back too much, I think it's a higher state of evolution and consciousness.
Yeah, I agree there. I've tried to ruin my life at least once a year, just kind of as a rule. I think it's like the way to go. So, so I don't.
Same.
Nothing wrong with ruining your life here
Hey,
and there.
hey
Because
guys, I gotta bounce because I gotta go pick up some beer before I go to happy hour. But it was nice chatting with everyone, and I really enjoyed it. And Justin, I hope you keep these things going.
Hopefully, I was actually about to suggest wrapping up. I mean, we're a little over 2 hours, and as I said, I had no plan going into this. I just jokingly put up a post on Twitter, and Carlin said that's a good idea, so we ran with it. But I've never done a Twitter space before. I want to start doing more of them. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I did
thank
simulcast
you.
this whole thing to YouTube as well, and I want to start doing that to encourage more cross-platforming and people to engage not just on Twitter and YouTube and Odyssey and all other brands and forms of social media that I'm not yet banned from. There's several I can't touch, but like still not allowed on True Social. But thank you so much for everybody for joining in, everyone who participated, and everyone who just hung out and listened. And you know what? If you liked what people had to say, make sure you give their profile a click, give them a follow, and keep in touch for next time, because I'm going to try and do these maybe at least weekly on an offsetting schedule from my normal podcast show, and maybe different random topics. Like, I mean, I love this. I call this an insurrection shit posting space, and we covered everything from January 6th to TERFs and the erasure of lesbian identity and the transgender issue and religion in politics. So who the hell knows where we'll end up next time? But hey, again, thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to hit the end button and see y'all
Thank you for
next time.
tuning
All
in
right?
to another
Thank you,
episode of
Justin.
Subversive.
Thanks
Make
so
sure to
much.
like, subscribe,
Thank
and
you.
turn on notifications to get alerted every time we go live on YouTube. And make sure to leave some comments and reviews on whatever platform you listen on to let me know what you thought of this episode. And a huge thanks and shout out to our sponsors and the awesome members of the Insurgency on Patreon. If you enjoyed this content, you can join the Insurgency on Patreon by following the links in the description for patreon.com/O'Donnell. And if you can't catch the show live, you can always catch it the next day on YouTube, Odyssey, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, CastBox, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts every day. So until next time, everybody, be free.